Andrew Tate approaches homeless veteran woman. What he does next shocks everyone. In a world where life's challenges often leave us questioning the kindness of others, Andrew Tate crosses paths with someone who has seen it all, a homeless veteran woman. What happens next will leave you speechless. In this video, we'll take you on a journey filled with unexpected twists and moments of profound humanity. You won't believe what unfolds as Andrew's actions take center stage, proving that sometimes the most remarkable stories are found in the most unlikely encounters. It was a brisk, unforgiving evening in the city. The streets were alive with the usual hustle and bustle, but the chill in the air seemed to make everything sharper, colder. Andrew Tate, his signature confidence radiating from his stride, walked purposefully through the crowded sidewalk. His tailored coat and polished shoes set him apart from the masses, a man seemingly unaffected by the daily struggles of those around him. Yet even he couldn't ignore the faint sound of a voice humming a forlorn tune as he passed by. At first, it was just background noise. The hum blended with the rustling leaves and the distant honk of cars. But then, he saw her. A woman sitting cross-legged by a lamppost, her figure hunched and small, as if trying to shrink away from the world that had long forgotten her. She clutched a worn, tattered blanket close to her chest, its faded colors a testament to the years of wear and neglect. Beside her was a small cup, empty except for a few scattered coins. Her face was weathered, each wrinkle a story of endurance and survival. Strands of grey hair escaped from under a frayed beanie, framing her tired yet resilient eyes. In her lap rested a photograph, a small, battered keepsake she clung to with reverence. It was of a younger version of herself, dressed in military fatigues, standing tall and proud. The contrast between the vibrant soldier in the photo and the woman now sitting on the cold pavement was stark, almost painful to witness. Andrew's stride faltered. Something about her presence drew him in. He wasn't the type to stop for just anyone. His life was a whirlwind of calculated moves and relentless ambition. But tonight was different. This wasn't pity or obligation, it was curiosity, perhaps even the stirrings of something deeper. He stood there for a moment, observing her, before finally stepping closer. "Hey," he said, his voice unusually soft, but still carrying the authority that defined him. She looked up, her eyes cautious but not unkind. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. "You don't have to stop. I know people like you don't usually bother." Andrew raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "People like me?" "Well-dressed, busy, important. You've got places to be, I'm sure." He smirked slightly, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "And what makes you think I'm in such a hurry?" She chuckled dryly, shaking her head. "Everyone's in a hurry these days, especially when it comes to walking past people like me." Her words hit harder than he expected. Andrew wasn't used to being challenged in this way. Not by someone sitting on a sidewalk, not by someone society often overlooked. But instead of brushing it off, he found himself sitting down beside her, oblivious to the stares of passers-by. "What's your name?" he asked, leaning against the cold concrete. "Margaret," she said simply, "but most people just call me Maggie." "Well, Maggie, I'm Andrew, and I've got time." The skepticism in her eyes melted, if only slightly. It was rare for anyone to take the time to talk to her, let alone someone like him. And so, hesitantly, she began to speak. She told him about her years in the military, how she had served with pride and purpose. She had traveled to places she never dreamed of seeing, faced challenges she never thought she could endure. But life after service was a different kind of battle. A string of misfortunes, loss of family, medical bills, and the crushing weight of PTSD had left her with nothing. "I always thought I'd bounce back," Maggie said, her voice wavering. "But one day, you wake up and realize you've lost everything. The uniform, the respect, the home, all gone, and no one notices." Andrew listened intently, his usual bravado replaced with an earnest curiosity. He wasn't used to this kind of vulnerability, not from others, and certainly not from himself. As Maggie spoke, he realized just how much of the world he'd been blind to, how easy it was to stay in his own bubble and ignore the struggles of those on the margins. "And what about that?" he asked, gesturing toward the photograph in her lap. Maggie smiled faintly, her fingers brushing the edges of the picture. "That's who I used to be, the person I keep trying to find again." For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. The noise of the city, the cold of the night, it all became background to the raw honesty unfolding between two strangers. Andrew felt something stir within him, a spark of understanding he hadn't expected. "What if you don't have to find her alone?" he asked quietly. Maggie looked at him, her eyes searching his for any trace of insincerity, but all she found was a man who, for reasons she couldn't quite grasp, seemed to genuinely care. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. The pause after Andrew's words hung in the air like a fragile thread, binding two vastly different worlds together. Maggie stared at him, her weathered face lined with both doubt and curiosity. She had heard promises before, empty words offered by passing strangers, quick fixes that never came to fruition. But there was something different about this man. Something in his tone, in his gaze, hinted that he wasn't just playing the role of a good Samaritan for show. Andrew straightened up and reached into his coat pocket. The air seemed to grow heavier as Maggie watched his every move, unsure of what was about to happen. From the inner pocket, he pulled out a sleek leather wallet and opened it. The faint shuffle of bills caught Maggie off guard, her breath hitching slightly as she saw him peel off several crisp $100 bills. "Here," he said, holding out the money. "This is for you." Maggie froze. Her first instinct was to push it away, decades of pride and self-reliance screaming at her not to take handouts. But Andrew's hand remained steady, his eyes unwavering. "Take it," he urged. "It's not just about the money. It's a start." Tears welled in Maggie's eyes, but she blinked them back, shaking her head. I don't know if I can accept this. What if it's a mistake? What if—" "Maggie," Andrew interrupted gently, "this isn't charity. Think of it as an investment in you. You have already proven you're strong and you have made it this far, but even the strongest people need a hand sometimes." Her hands trembled as she reached out, taking the money hesitantly. The weight of the bills felt surreal in her grasp, a tangible reminder that kindness could still exist in a world that often seemed so cruel. She looked up at Andrew, her voice cracking. "Thank you, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied with a small smile. "But I'm not done yet." Before she could question him, Andrew stood up and extended his hand to her. "Come on." Maggie stared at him, confused. "Come on where?" "Dinner," he said matter-of-factly. "I'm starving, and I'm guessing you haven't had a proper meal in a while." Her lips parted in disbelief. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said, waving his hand toward a nearby diner. "Unless you've got a better place in mind." Maggie hesitated, looking down at her tattered clothes and the worn blanket draped over her shoulders. "I can't walk into a restaurant looking like this." Andrew's expression softened. "No one's going to care, and if they do, that's their problem, not yours. Let's go." With a deep breath, Maggie allowed herself to be helped to her feet. The simple act of standing beside someone who treated her with dignity felt like a small triumph. Together, they crossed the street and stepped into the warm, inviting glow of the diner. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon hit her immediately, and her stomach growled in response. It had been so long since she'd been in a place like this, a place where people laughed over plates of food, where the hum of conversation created a sense of normalcy she had almost forgotten. Andrew guided her to a booth near the window and gestured for her to sit. As she slid into the seat, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass. The image startled her. She had grown so used to blending into the background that seeing herself in a well-lit space felt jarring. A waitress appeared with a smile, though her eyes flickered with curiosity as she glanced between the sharply dressed Andrew and the disheveled Maggie. "What can I get you folks?" Andrew didn't hesitate. "Whatever she wants, and keep it coming." Maggie's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but Andrew gave her an encouraging nod. Tentatively, she glanced at the menu. The words swam before her eyes. She couldn't remember the last time she had ordered from a menu without mentally calculating every penny. Just a sandwich," she murmured. Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Maggie, get what you want, not what you think you deserve. There's a difference." His words struck a chord, and for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine something more than bare survival. "Okay," she said, her voice firmer. "A sandwich, a bowl of soup, and maybe some fries." "And pie?" Andrew added with a grin. "You can't come to a diner and not get pie." The waitress jotted down the order and walked away, leaving Maggie to stare at the table, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I don't know why you're doing this," she admitted softly. "You don't even know me." Andrew leaned back in his seat, studying her. "You're right. I don't. But I know enough. You've served your country. You've faced challenges most people can't even imagine. That's all I need to know." Maggie looked at him, her walls beginning to crumble. People don't usually see that. They just see someone who failed. "Well, they're blind," Andrew said firmly. "And if this world has taught me anything, it's that people like you are the real fighters." The food arrived shortly after, steaming and inviting. As Maggie took her first bite, she couldn't help but close her eyes, savoring the warmth and flavor. It wasn't just food. It was a reminder that she was still alive, still capable of experiencing joy, however small. For the next hour they talked. The barriers between them dissolved as Maggie opened up about her past, her struggles, and her hopes. And for the first time in a long while, she felt heard. Truly heard. Andrew, too, found himself reflecting on his own life, his own privilege. In Maggie, he saw resilience, strength, and a spark of determination that refused to be extinguished. As the meal came to an end, Maggie sat back with a contented sigh. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You already have," Andrew replied. "Just don't give up. You've got a lot more fight left in you, Maggie." The night didn't end with the warm meal at the diner. Andrew leaned back in the booth, observing Maggie as she recounted fragments of her life, her struggles, her victories, her moments of heartbreak. He listened intently, nodding occasionally, his mind working on something deeper than the immediate conversation. When the bill came, Andrew didn't even glance at it before placing a generous tip on the table. As they stepped outside, the cold night air hit them again, but it felt less harsh this time. Maggie wrapped her arms around herself, the weight of the evening settling over her in a way that was oddly comforting. "What now?" she asked hesitantly. Andrew looked at her, his eyes serious. "You deserve more than just a good meal and some cash in your pocket. You've been fighting this battle alone for too long. Let's change that." Maggie blinked, unsure of what he meant. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we're going to get you off this street tonight." He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through contacts. "There's a hotel not too far from here. I'll cover a room for as long as it takes to get you on your feet." Maggie's mouth fell open. "A hotel? Are you serious?" "Andrew, you've already done enough. I can't—" "Yes, you can," he interrupted firmly. "Maggie, this isn't about charity. It's about dignity. Everyone deserves a safe place to sleep, especially someone who's given as much as you have." Before she could argue further, he was already making the call. She stood there, stunned, as he arranged for her to have a room, his tone decisive and unwavering. Within minutes, the plan was set. "Come on," he said, gesturing for her to follow. "Let's get you settled." The walk to the hotel was quiet, Maggie's mind racing with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. When they arrived, Andrew spoke with the front desk staff, ensuring everything was handled. The clerk handed Maggie a keycard with a polite smile, and Andrew turned to her, his expression softening. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Tomorrow, we're going to figure out the next steps. Job opportunities, counseling, whatever you need. But for tonight, just rest." Maggie held the keycard tightly, her eyes brimming with tears. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "No one's ever done anything like this for me." Andrew smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank me, just promise me you won't give up." She nodded, unable to speak. As she disappeared into the elevator, Andrew stood in the lobby for a moment, his thoughts swirling. For all his accomplishments, this simple act of kindness felt more fulfilling than any victory he'd ever achieved. The following morning, true to his word, Andrew returned to the hotel with a plan. Over breakfast in the small dining area, he outlined what he had arranged. He had contacted a local non-profit that specialized in helping veterans transition back into society. They provided counseling, job training, and temporary housing for those in need. Andrew had already spoken with their director, who was eager to meet Maggie. At first, Maggie was hesitant. She had grown so accustomed to rejection and disappointment that the idea of someone genuinely wanting to help felt almost foreign. But Andrew's unwavering confidence in her abilities began to chip away at her doubt. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," he said. "Let these people help you. You've carried this burden long enough." By the end of their breakfast, Maggie agreed. Andrew accompanied her to the non-profit's office, where she was greeted warmly by the staff. They listened to her story with the same compassion Andrew had shown, assuring her that she was in good hands. Over the next few weeks, Maggie began to rebuild her life. With the non-profit's support, she received therapy to address her PTSD, updated her resume, and attended job interviews. Andrew checked in regularly, his presence a constant reminder that she wasn't alone in this journey. One afternoon, she received a call from a local company offering her a position in their administrative department. It wasn't just a job. It was a chance to regain her independence and start fresh. She called Andrew immediately, her voice bursting with excitement. "You were right, she said, tears streaming down her face. "I can do this." "I never doubted it," he replied. Maggie's transformation didn't just impact her own life. It created a ripple effect. Inspired by her story, others in the non-profits program began to believe in their own potential. Andrew's unexpected act of kindness had set off a chain reaction, reminding everyone that even the smallest gestures could lead to profound change. For Andrew, the experience was transformative as well. He began to see the world through a different lens, one that prioritized connection and empathy over ambition and status. He started using his platform to advocate for causes like veteran support and homelessness, proving that his actions that night weren't just a one-time gesture, but the beginning of a broader commitment to making a difference. As for Maggie, she eventually moved into a small apartment of her own. The photograph of her younger self, once a painful reminder of what she had lost, now sat proudly on her new desk, a symbol of how far she had come. She often thought about Andrew and the night he stopped to talk to her on that cold street. It wasn't just his money or his connections that had changed her life. It was his belief in her when she had almost stopped believing in herself. Their paths rarely crossed after that, but the impact of their meeting lingered. For Maggie, it was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope could find its way back. For Andrew, it was proof that true strength wasn't just about power or success. It was about lifting others up when they needed it most.